Welcome back to the State and Local Sports Show here with Mark Tennis of Cal High Sports, the co-founder and editor. We're an unofficial midway point through the high school football season. In today's record on our new preps page, I did a column kind of talking about some hypothetical mid-season awards. First of all, we call our actual award All-Area Player of the Year. That's in December. But for now, MVP, as you look at this area, Stockton, San Joaquin, even up into the Motherlode, who would you, at this point, lean toward for an MVP in this area?
Well, I mean, you picked Jake Dunaway of St. Mary's in the paper today, which is a solid choice. I tend to agree with that. I also would look at some of the other players from St. Mary's. You know, Popo Amavai is one of the best players in linemen in Northern California. Linemen usually don't get that kind of recognition, but he's going on both offense and defense, battling a lot of good players, and looks very good out there. And so this could be a year to perhaps do that. And then, Lincoln's Aaron Thomas had a game last week where he accounted for 6 touchdowns. And I just know how much how important he is to that team. Now, if they make the playoffs, he's such a big presence out there with them, with his running and passing and leadership. He's somebody I would put in that category as well.
Now, Dunaway, they have obviously, to me, the best offensive line with Amave, the best receiving core in the area by far. So, not just he would have success with him, but his accuracy throughout his career has been really good. He's up to 41 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions for his career. 2 of those interceptions coming against St. John Bosco, which isn't, that's nothing to cry over.
No.
When you look at, I don't want to say coach of the year, but some of the coaches who have impressed me so far, you look at the city of Manteca. Those 3 teams are 11-1 combined. Manteca and East Union both 4-0, and an emotional win over Lathrop for East Union last week. And Sierra, after its state championship run, 3-1, almost upset Oakdale last week. Their coach, Jeff Harbison, they've avoided any kind of a championship hangover. Eric Reese and Manteca, we were just talking before the podcast, they're so good every year that sometimes we don't mention them because we're so used to them winning so much.
Yep.
And, of course, Willie Herrera at East Union trying to get them back in the right direction. Coaches, in your mind, who are, have impressed you, or even just, teams who have really improved this year?
Well, all 3 of those coaches you mentioned have done a great job. Manteca, given to where they were last year, they have such a high standard, and it seems like they're back to a very, very high level, and we'll see how they end up. So if they do go far in Division III, Eric Reese would be up for some coaching honors. But, of course, the other ones you mentioned have all done a great job. We just have a long way to go. And you mentioned your most improved team. I'm going to kind of throw one a little bit out of left field. I'm going to say Brookside Christian. It was hard not to notice last week. Brookside only lost to Stone Ridge of Merced 33-26, and Stone Ridge just beat everybody by 60 points in that division last year. So Brookside is coming close. Shows that a lot of improvement on their part, or it could be that Stone Ridge isn't as good either. So it could be both. But I'm gonna mention Brookside for that spot.
Well, another reason that I think you have a great point there with Brookside Christian is they almost beat Argonaut. They led Argonaut of the Motherlode League with less than 10 seconds to go. Motherlode League way tougher than the CCAA that Brookside plays in. And that Argonaut team has the longest running win streak of anyone in their coverage area, which is 5 in a row dating back to last year. When you look at improved players, I think we both looked at the running back position. For me, last year for Manteca with some learning linemen and a new running back in Cameron Beeman, he had his ups and downs. But he's already up near 500 yards. He just had a 3-touchdown game. At Kimball, he's kind of a change of pace from the last dominant running back before him, Hector Soto. But, they've had a lot of power guys. It doesn't hurt to have kind of a shifty guy like him. Who have you noticed in terms of being incredibly improved this season?
Well, from players I've seen in person, it's hard not to notice Dusty Frampton from St. Mary's as an improved player. He's one of the elite players and is a Player of the Year candidate. But as a sophomore, he was kind of a part-time guy. He had some good games, but he wasn't a player that approached the elite level, and he is now. His size, his speed, breaking tackles, he definitely has elevated himself physically and in his skills to a much higher level, breaking tackles and a lot of other things. So he's somebody who I think has really improved since last year.
Mark Tennis does a weekly column for us in the Record and RecordNet.com. This week we're talking one of my favorite kind of nerdy subjects, the real kind of looking into playoff structure and that kind of thing, with playoff football, bubble teams, not just teams trying to get into the playoffs, but other teams can affect your division. If you could kind of give us a rundown of what you talked about.
Well, when people say teams on the bubble, most of the time you're talking about teams in the rankings that are on the bubble for breaking into the rankings in the next weeks. But in this case, in the Sac Joaquin section, you have, because of the way they do the playoffs here, you don't know exactly where the line is going to be drawn for each division, between Division 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, et cetera, et cetera. So you never know where the line is. Now, Stag right now is listed in Division 1 by the section office, but they're the last team on the bubble, so they're definitely on the bubble. That means that will Stag be Division 1 or will Stag be Division 2 if they make the playoffs? The best guess, the most likely scenario, is that they're going to be in Division 2 because there'll be a lot of Division 2 teams that will win league titles and then move up to Division 1, if that all makes sense. But that's kind of how it works. Everything's sort of interlocked and interrelated. And then another team is Sonora, which is on the bubble between Division 4 and Division 5. Now, last year, people may remember, Sonora was in Division 4. Then they dropped to Division 5. They wound up winning Division 5 and wound up in a different bowl game. And that opened it up a little bit for Division 4. How this year, I think Sonora is probably also going to drop down to Division 5. And I think that gives a team like Calaveras a much better shot in Division 4 because they played Sonora last week, and they still, I don't think they're as good as Sonora, but they may be good enough to win Division 4 if Sonora is down in Division 5. So that's where it's kind of interesting with all these bubble teams. And there's some that even affect Manteca, maybe in Division 3, like a Merced could drop to Division 3. I don't know how good Merced is this year, but that's a big-time, historically great program in the Sac Joaquin section, and they could be Division 3 this year instead of Division 2. So those are what we call playoff bubble teams, and it'll be interesting to see where teams fall and how it affects each bracket when those are done.
You talk about Calaveras in Division 4. You look at last year with Sierra from the VOL getting in. I mean, the fifth-place team in their own league, but compared to Division 4, they soared right through that bracket. And you could see if either Weston Ranch or Lathrop, both Division 4 teams, if they were able to get 6 wins and get an at-large bid into the playoffs, or maybe get the number 3 seed from the who knows, Division 4. And
well, Placer last year was the bubble team that impacted Sierra because Placer looked like they were going to be Division 4, but they went 10-0. They ended up on the other side of the line and went to Division 3, so they didn't have to play. So Sierra didn't have to worry about Placer in Division 4, and that opened it up for all those teams in Division 4 with Placer moving up to 3. So that's another example was last year with Placer.
39 students, I think, what's the difference there in the fates of those teams. And my favorite example is from 2 years ago. Stag sneaks into the playoffs last minute, keeping away McNair, which is a Division II enrollment. Stag is the smallest team in Division I, bumping Grant of Sacramento down to Division II. An undefeated Grant team, as you mentioned, that St. Mary's eventually met and lost to in the section final. So it was like one Stockton school surprise entrance into the playoffs derails the championship bid of another.
It's all interrelated, and it's all interrelated to the state bowl game matchups because it's all based on winning a section title. So what division you end up in your section then becomes important even on the statewide level.
I want to mention briefly just the rarity of the high school football upset, something I've thought about. Last week, East Union, one of the surprises by beating Lathrop on the road. Can they do it again this week against Sierra? Last week, was at home. This week, Sierra on the road. I mean, you mentioned last week that about 75-80% of predictions from reporters and media guys on high school football are usually correct. What do you think it is about high school football that's a bit easier to predict than especially like an NFL?
Well, I think that there's such a big gap between the haves and the have-nots in high school football that it's pretty obvious in most situations who's going to win each particular game in many of the leagues, not just around here, but all over the state. And it just seems like it's pretty easy to get a lot of them correct. The predictions that are most interesting to me to look at are when you have teams from different areas playing each other. So you'll have a team from the Sacramento area playing a team from Merced or Fresno or whatever, and the local high school writer almost always picks their home team to win when they're playing an out of area team. You didn't pick St. Mary's to beat Bosco last week, which was smart, because Bosco is just at another level than other teams. But a lot of teams, a lot of guys probably would have picked St. Mary's to beat Bosco just by going off their local connections. So I think that those are the most interesting ones when you see teams from different areas playing. In state finals, you almost always see the local writer picking the local team to win. And that doesn't change very much.
All right, over on CalHighSports.com, the Gold Club membership, less than $20 a year, less than $2 a month. It's all of those state record books, insider content rankings. They have Sac Joaquin section football rankings now that I take a look at every Monday, top 25. Mark, thanks as always for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll do it again next week.